The much-anticipated Asian Games is just around the corner and our very own Gilas Pilipinas is leaving no stone unturned in their preparations for the challenge. Now here with us to give more insight on Gilas is basketball analyst Coach Mark Molina. Welcome to the game, Coach Mark. Z,
thanks guys.
marami tayong updates na itatanong at malalaman from Coach Mark tonight.
Yes, let's start off with how much new players are involved in this lineup for the Asian Games. Madaming nagulat na sorpresa sa mga bagong players na to. Let's start off with Kevin Alas.
Well, Kevin is the only one from the 5 new guys who didn't play in the SEA Games.
Okay.
But Kevin brings a lot to the table. He's not new in the sense that he's played for Gilas before in the past for FIBA qualifying tournaments and such. But he brings a lot of experience. He brings scoring at the point guard position because you need that in the international play. You need outside shooting from the point guard position, and Kevin brings that to the table for Gilas.
Obviously, it's not easy with the limited time of preparation that Gilas has, diba, Coach Mark? Kasi aalis na sila this Saturday for the Asian Games. But another guy that they added to this roster is CJ Perez, a guy that just played in the recently concluded World Cup. What does he bring to the table para sa Gilas Pilipinas?
Oh, a lot. And not just for this lineup because majority of this team played in the SEA Games. So chemistry-wise, I don't think that's a major concern. They haven't practiced, they will not practice together as a group for a long time. But they've played a lot together. CJ Perez, he was a big factor in us winning that SEA Games gold medal. He's back. He played in the World Cup. He begged off initially because I think there some injury that he was, but now that he was needed once again, he's back playing for Gilas.
So we got CJ Perez, a veteran in that sense. But let's talk about Arvin Tolentino. He was part of the previous lineup, but during his youth days pa yan. So how do you think, Coach Mark, he will add to the success of the team?
Well, in the SEA Games, he actually played well as coming off the bench as a shooting forward.
Yeah.
Which is huge for this lineup because you cannot have enough outside shooters in the international game, and that's what Arvin brings to the table. I also like that in the SEA Games, despite not playing heavy minutes, he was able to contribute playing 10, 12 minutes a game because that's going to be his role again in this team. He's not going to be a starter, but as a guy coming off the bench who can give you points either through penetrations or, most importantly, from outside shots. Arvin really brings that to the table, and he has size to play 3 or 4.
And also adding to this list of new players para sa Gilas, when you talk about Chris Ross, you think about his leadership, pagiging veterano niya. And obviously, kailangan to ng Gilas Pilipinas with a lot of young guys also joining the team.
It's all about intangibles with Chris Ross. You will not expect him to score a lot of points, maybe 2-4 points lang nga yan usually. But defensively, he's a lockdown guard. He's going to be a defender. He will play the best perimeter player from the opposing team. And then, you mentioned leadership. He definitely has that. We saw that in the SEA Games when Chot Reyes needed somebody to pull the team together when they were down against, in the finals against Cambodia. Chris Ross was a big factor.
And speaking of, veterans adding to this new roster, Marshall Lassiter, how would his international experience previously would add to, maybe the success of the team?
He's gonna be huge because you always need a shooter like Marshall, and without R.R. Pogoy, because I believe R.R. Pogoy was removed because of an injury. He was our best shooter during the World Cup. Among the locals, of course, not including Jordan Clarkson. So without him, you need somebody to step in and become that spot-up shooter for this team. Remember, we're going to have Brownlee. We're going to have Ange Kwame.
Right.
So those two guys can be double-teamed, maybe creating from the perimeter or inside the paint. So you will need somebody to space the floor, especially for Justin Brownlee. And Marshall Lassiter fits the bill.
Now that we know sino ba yung mga papalit dun sa mga ineligible to play for the Asian Games, let's talk about the opponents, yung mga kasama natin sa group stage, Coach Mark. Unahin na natin dito yung Jordan. We know that Jordan had a tough campaign in the World Cup dahil malakas yung kagrupo nila. But this time around, they're gonna play in the Asian Games. And we don't know their final roster yet, but Rondae Hollis Jefferson can possibly play for this team. What do you think about the Jordan squad that we will face in the Asian Games?
They're going to be a big threat. They're the toughest opponent in the group, obviously, because they also qualified for the World Cup. They did not win the game. They finished last, but they almost beat New Zealand. And we all know how tough New Zealand is. Rondé Hollis Jefferson, if he plays, is going to be a handful. Of course, we're all familiar with him because he also plays here. But he's an all-around player. He's a leader. He's a very competitive player. So if he plays, we're gonna have a problem against RHJ for sure. But I still like the chances of Gilas because I think the combination of Kwame and Brownlee would be enough for us to win this group.
Oh, and speaking of other opponents, what about Bahrain and Thailand? How are we gonna be matching up to these two teams?
Thailand is much improved. We saw that in the SEA Games.
Yeah.
You cannot take them for granted for sure. If we have an off game, we can lose to Thailand or even a Bahrain.
Okay.
But I'm pretty confident that Gilas should be able to handle both of those teams, and hopefully we beat Jordan too, which is the toughest in our group, and so we can be #1 in our group.
There's also China, by the way, in this group. At
China lang naman.
Sila yung defending champion and kakakita lang natin sa kanila recently in the World Cup, a team that we beat back, of course, in the classification round. But what do you think about their chances here in the Asian Games? Yung lineup nila, I think, very similar to what they brought to the World Cup.
Well, two things that we have to watch out for China. Of course, Kyle Anderson will not play.
Yes.
But number one, their home court advantage baliktad ngayon. We beat them in Araneta.
Right.
Now, home court advantage would be
Hangzhou naman.
to their advantage. That's the first. And secondly, I'm sure gustong-gusto niyan pumawi sa atin. They lost to us. I cannot remember beating China by 20 points, and we did that the last time. So gustong-gusto niyan bumawi. So we have to match the energy of China when we play them in their home floor.
Alright, as Dip mentioned earlier, maikli na lang yung preparation natin since we're leaving on Saturday, September 23. But before that, meron tayong friendly match with South Korea. How do you think that would help? In what sense would it add to the preparation for this?
You're gonna need a lot of games ideally, but since we don't have enough time, it's gonna be very important. I think that's the only game this group will play together under Coach Tim Cone. The players, I think they're familiar with each other. They've been playing in the PBA a long time. They've been teammates in previous editions of the national team. But of course, Tim Cone is coming in as a new coach. But we all know how good he is, how established Coach Tim Cone is. I think he's going to be able to get this team ready. And part of that is really needing to play more games. And I think this game against the Korean, I think the LG Sakers or whatever, should be an important part of the preparation for Gilas.
Coach Mark, it's been a very eventful past few weeks for
goodness.
Gilas
Basketball,
Pilipinas
yes.
pagkatapos ng World Cup. Of course, Coach Tim Cone will be the head coach this time around at may mga bagong players. How do you like how Gilas is handling everything right now? Siyempre, outside factors yun eh. You could possibly get distracted, but what do you think of their, of course, attitude right now heading towards the Asian Games?
Well, there's no better guy to replace Chot Reyes than Tim Cone, because not only is Tim the most established or maybe the GOAT of all coaches in the PBA, but he was also in that coaching staff of Chot Reyes during the World Cup. So he's been working with this team a long time. Jong is also part of that team. And then, of course, Tim has Richard De Rosario, who's very familiar with. I think we have the right coaching staff for this Asian Games. The preparation time is not ideal again, but these PBA players, they're veterans. They've been in this situation before. Junmar is still there. Scotty Thompson. I think Scotty's going to be a different player in this Asian Games as compared to the World Cup, when I think medyo nahirapan siya adjusting playing with Jordan Clarkson. But I'm pretty sure with Tim Cone on the board, we're going to see a different Scotty Thompson in the Asian Games.
Right. They know what they need to do when they get to China for the Asian Games. As for us, mag-cheer lang tayo as always for
More
Gilas
basketball for
Pilipinas.
us.
Maraming salamat, Coach Mark, for
Thanks, guys.
joining
Thank
us
you,
here in the
Coach
game.
Mark.